Thank you for tuning into this yin yoga class. This is going to be a down regulating class, great way to relieve stress and also to work into the hips and the spine with some various poses that we take on tonight for props to help you stay nice and comfortable and to make these poses accessible. Have a couple blocks and a blanket. You can kind of see this orientation how I have a block on the second highest height, and then just behind it, a block on the first highest height. And then I've got this little blanket. That's how we'll be opening up. A strap will be really handy today, and then something to kneel on, which might be the blanket that you have, or if you have a pad that you like to kneel on, you can definitely have that. Um, and we'll get started. We're gonna have a little bit of a meditation at the end of toward the end of class. So we'll get right into our first pose, which will be creeping lizard. So we're gonna start off with this prop structure to support our chest and hold us almost in like a sphinx type shape. So I've got this block on the second highest height, and that's towards the top of my mat, and then just in front of it, the one on the first highest height, and then this rolled up blanket. You could use a pillow, you could use a bolster just to soften things up. And then that's almost like a support in this sphinx pose, right? To take it into creeping lizard, my left leg is gonna bend up and out to the side. And I could scoot over a little bit if having my knee off my mat was bothersome. Now, we've been doing frog a lot, so you can play with where your knee goes and how deep that works into your hip. If you want to go deeper, maybe your knee goes up a little bit higher. Maybe your knee's in line with your belly button, or if you need to take it easy tonight, you can let that knee drop. It could be in line with the right knee. So play with that lever, see how that feels. So now I'm going to be reaching back for my foot. So my right foot lifts and my left hand could reach back for the foot. This is where you could also use the strap. Just make a little bit of a bite in your strap and you can lace that around your foot. And you could choose to keep this twisting where you choke up on the strap and you're reaching back, or you could make the strap really, really long. See if I can do it where that you can take the twist out of it. A lot going on, so you can decide. And then if the foot just isn't working, or maybe your right knee is talking to you loudly, a great modification is just to have that back foot on something so your knee is bent a little bit, just not a lot of it. And whatever you have going on here, maybe you can rest into it. Creeping lizard is a great pose. It works the liver and gallbladder line in many different ways. So we'll be coming back to it throughout spring, just in different ways, using different props, sometimes more intense, sometimes really restorative. So make it your own. And if it doesn't look like mine, don't worry. In yin, the belly breath is a great one to keep coming back to because the lower abdomen and really the whole abdomen is a part of that hip region of connective tissue. And the breath is more than just the give and take of oxygen and carbon dioxide. It's breathing in new energy into the body and releasing stress from the body. Maybe you feel that muscular tension, mental tension leaving your body as you breathe out. We have about 2 more minutes in the pose, so check in. How are things going? Does it feel good? Does it not feel good? Always accommodate where you're at without ever a second thought or should have, could have about where you are today. Sometimes we're carrying more physical stress and tension and we need to be more gentle. Sometimes we've had a great day and we want to go deeper. So you decide where you're at, regardless if whatever state you're in is your fault or not. Maybe it was a rough week. Maybe you had 6 cheeseburgers for lunch. Maybe you had a nice Caesar salad and you're feeling really good. And no matter, we just meet the body where it is. So those 6 cheeseburgers would be a lot. Okay, if you are holding the foot or you're using your strap, let that go back down to the ground, and we'll take the left leg out of our frog pose, and then we kind of come through this middle ground sphinx. If you want to create more space on the right side of your mat for that right knee to come up and out into frog, you could scoot your little apparatus of yoga props over to the left. And then the right leg will come up and out into frog. And again, play with where your knee is now. I just noticed, and I can talk to this, that because that was kind of an intense pose for me on the right side, that now coming into frog on the right side, I have a little bit more sensation. So maybe I have to work into the depth on the right side a little slower than how quickly I jumped in on that first side. So it's hard to see from this angle, but my right leg is definitely not as deep into frog as my left leg was, and that could change or maybe not through the pose. We'll see. And then the left leg will lift, and it could be the right hand that reaches back for the foot. That's what worked for me on the second side, or you could use your strap, or maybe the foot just rests on a prop so that the knee is a little bit bent. You decide what's best for you now and be finicky. Take a few moments to get into the pose. That Goldilocks principle of not too much, but just enough. Adjusting your pose and using your props so that, again, you're meeting your body, this side, where it's at. Letting go of any stories around why that is the case. And just adapting and being with the moment and the breath. And remember, not all stress is bad. And having a gentle sensation lets you know that you're applying a gentle stress to the pose. And that stress is what makes the tissue stronger. But that's also a U-shaped curve, and that some stress is good and too much can cause damage. And that's with all things in life. Right? Every year, some article, some fad comes out that something is bad for us, whether that's a style of movement or a certain food or an activity. And it tends to be because of that U-shaped curve. Too much of something can always be bad. Okay, let the foot go. Let the left foot come down. Let the right leg slowly come out of frog pose. And let's just stay in Sphinx pose for another couple minutes. It's hard to think that we were actually working our lower back, that target area for Sphinx. Because there's probably so much sensation going on the hips, but we have been in a back bend for this whole time. So you could stay with whatever level you're working with, whatever level prop that you're going, based on the situation of the setup that you have, or you come out if you need to, or you could go deeper. Maybe pressing the palms down and coming into a seal. If you want a very deep back bend. If you're coming up into seal, that's a deep back bend. You also have the ability to almost let the chest kind of sink in the arms, let the shoulder blades come together, and this can be a nice heart opener shoulder pose too. And we'll start to bring the chest down to the ground to relieve ourselves from the back bend. So you can kind of slide your blanket block prop out of the way and let the head come all the way down, coming out of the back bend. If your feet are still resting on something behind you, that has even a little bit of a back bend too. So you could let your feet come to the ground. And either rest the forehead or the cheek down for a few breaths. If you're bringing the cheek down, make sure you switch sides after a few rounds of breath so you get an equal stretch on your neck. When you're ready to transition, take your time. You'll come up to tabletop pose and we'll set ourselves up for our child's pose with a twist. And I like to make a really soft place for my knees and the tops of my ankles to land. And child's pose with a twist, we want to have the knees, or I find it's best to have the knees as wide as it feels comfortable. And that creates more of a shallow angle or a shallow slope or less of a slope for the spine so that we're in less of a back bend when we're twisting. If the knees are a little bit closer together, the hips will be pitched higher and we'll just have a little bit more of a back bend. So I guess you could maybe choose that back bend and have the knees a little bit closer if you'd like. And then to take the upper body into the twist, the arms will extend forward so that the elbows are lifted and the palms are pressing. They could be as wide as you'd like or as narrow as feels comfortable. And the right arm will thread underneath the left. And we want the right shoulder to be coming down to the ground. And we want to rest the right temple down or the forehead down to something. So it could come to the mat or it could come to the ground. Now I'm noticing that that would be kind of a drop for me, and it might be better to use a block as a pillow, maybe for you too. And the left arm can stay resting, or if you want to take the left hand into a bind behind your back, you'll bring the back of the left hand to the lower back, and it could just sit there on your sacrum. You could maybe hold on to your shirt or tuck your hand into the waistband of the pants to help it stay there. And about 5 more breaths on this side. Can you count each exhale and feel a little bit of tension, a little bit more leaving? If your left hand is in a bind, you can let the arm release and the left hand come down. And then we'll unthread the right arm and extend the right arm out. And then we'll take the twist in the other way. The left arm will thread under. Feel free to adjust the width of your knees or maybe put a prop underneath your seat if your hips are speaking loudly to you in this pose and you need to come back to some middle ground. And again, we want that left shoulder to be down now, and you could bring the forehead or the left temple down. And 5 more breaths on this side. Releasing with the exhale. And then we'll untwist. Now I have one more variation of child's pose that I want to take, and that's a side bend. And don't worry, for those of you that need a little break from child's pose, I'll show you an option to do this pose without being in child's pose. If you're okay and you want to continue for child's pose, you could change the angle or how wide your knees are slightly, and then both hands walk over to the right, or sorry, to the left. So we get a right side bend, and you could have your hands down on the ground. You could hold the right wrist with the left hand, and maybe the right hand grips the left side of the mat. And just like before, you'll want the head to rest comfortably, whether that's hanging down on the mat or using a prop. You can do this pose laying down on your abdomen too, getting the same wonderful side bend. So if you need a break from child's pose, extend the legs back behind you. You could scoot yourself over to the right side of your mat, and then as your hands reach over to the left, you have those same options. Hands could be down to the ground. The left hand could hold the right wrist, or maybe the right wrist could grip the mat, and you can rest the head. The gallbladder line, which is the pair to the liver meridian, they're kind of like sister meridians that relate to the season of spring. The gallbladder runs along the side of the body. All the way from the outside of the foot, up the outer leg, the outer hip, the side of the torso. It ends on the side of the head. The side bend pose mostly working into the torso. Maybe you notice that outer hip region. Maybe it's more on the upper part of the body. And just send some nice breath in where you can. Yeah. And then we'll come back to center, whether you're laying on your abdomen or you're in the child's pose, and then the arms will go over to the other side. So working the left side body, the hands can reach over to the right side of the mat and either stay to the ground, or the right hand could hold the left wrist, and the left hand could grip the right edge of the mat, and find a comfortable spot for your head to rest. And send a few more breaths into that left side body. And then coming back to center, and you can lift the hips out of child's pose. And it might feel nice to come down to the abdomen, maybe in Sphinx, just to let the front of the hips open and the legs lengthen after that long compression in the front of the hips. And then we'll set up to roll onto our backs. You'll want to remove anything from your mat so that, or maybe you outstretch the blanket over your whole mat so that no part of your body is kind of higher than the other. And as you come to lay down, you'll want to make sure that you have a strap and a block at the ready. And we'll start in this half cork shape where the knees are bent, the feet are to the mat. And if that doesn't feel comfortable or you're feeling like you have to effort to keep your legs from falling out, you could take your feet wider and let your knees fall in. And rest the hands anywhere that feels comfortable as we allow the body to settle into this new orientation on our mat. Notice the path the breath takes through the body. See if you can feel your breath nice and full, even reaching down into the lower part of your abdomen and your hips. Okay, if you have a block or if you're working with a bolster, go ahead and put it over to the left side of your mat. And we'll bring the knees to kind of be as wide as the hips, and same thing for the feet. Go ahead and find your strap, and we're going to lasso the right foot and extend the right foot up to the ceiling. Now, some people prefer to have a lot of slack with the strap so that their arms can be resting down on the ground. I like to have my arm extended so I hold a little bit higher. You can see kind of nicely from this angle, my little strap method here, bringing the arm and hand in between the strap and the leg, and then back around, and I kind of grab it where my arm is straight, so I'm just kind of using the tension, and I don't have to use any stress in my arm or shoulder to keep it there. And then I take the tail of the strap and I kind of lasso it around my thumb to hold it, and that feels nice for me. But there's a million ways to hold the strap, and to strap the foot too. It could be around the toes or the ball of the foot or the heel, really whatever works nicely. Try to do it so that you feel a little opening in the back of your leg, but there's not a lot of stress in the shoulder and the arm and the neck. And we'll stay here for another minute or so, and you can decide to keep the left leg bent with the foot to the mat or extend it long. And the right foot doesn't need to be exactly over the right hip, but that alignment tends to be the best as far as allowing comfort for the spine. If I let my foot get too kind of far over my torso or my head, I might stress out the connective tissue in the back of the leg. And if my foot trails a little bit more forward, that can put a lot of stress on my lower back. Notice the back of your head and the back of your neck and your shoulders. Using that exhale to focus on that area and allow it to be tension free or as little tension as possible. Now to come into the second part of the pose, rebend the left knee if it's not already, and put the left foot to the ground. Step into the left foot so that the hips lift slightly and bring the hips a little bit over to the right, a little bit off-centered. The left leg could go long if that was your preference. And now we're going to come into the twist, guiding the right foot across the body. I like to hold the strap in my left hand to do that. And then I roll to my left side, and then my shin or my foot or my knee will rest on whatever prop I had put over there. So it could be your bolster or a block. And you might just work the leg part of it first, get that situated. And then you slowly work into the twist by letting the torso open up to the ceiling and let the right arm out to the right. To find more depth in the pose, the legs could straighten. To find more ease, you could let the knees bend some. One like our prone shapes where we're working a little bit more into the internal hip line and the front of the hip. Now we're kind of working the side and the back of the left hip here too, as well as doing a lot with the twisting of the spine. And so the main focus of the pose up until now has been this right side hip. There's an add-on or a leg grab of the left foot, which can add an opening to the front of the left hip. And that's kind of like the cherry on top. It's not necessarily necessary if it causes too much stress or if you're just needing more of a relaxed pose. With that said, if you want to add it in, the left foot can bend and just the left knee. The left foot could be flexed or pointed, but when the left knee bends, that's going to pull the connective tissue, do a slight stress to the front of the left hip. That could be all you need, or you could use your hand or your strap to lasso the left foot. But again, go back to that Goldilocks principle. If it's kind of taking too much out of your reserve, if it's too much stress, then we let it go. If it feels good, if it adds a good amount of stress, then it's good. And what does that mean? What is good? What is bad? Whatever your gut instinct tells you, then who cares about the reasons why? It could be mentally it's too much, it could be physically too much, it could be your fault, it could be genetics. Who cares? Do what's good for you in this moment, listening to your body, tuning into the breath, right? Listening to the gut reaction of the mind or whatever our emotional reaction isn't necessarily what I'm talking about, but tuning into your breath. What is that lower abdomen part of the body telling you to do? Like life, this pulls us in many different directions, and we have to know when to hold them and when to fold them. Right? No perfect formula, no right answer. Doing the best with what we have, what we know, what we feel today. And over the next 10 breaths or so, start to work your way slowly out of the pose, releasing different bits here or there. It can be nice to have both knees bent before you roll onto your back. And there's no rush. It will meet in this half corpse shape, this constructive rest where the knees are bent and the feet are to the mat. And we'll take a few breaths here in neutral and just notice left side to right side. When you're ready to start setting yourself up for the second side, you can move your prop over to the right side of your mat, block or bolster. Locate your strap again. And we strap the left foot, the left leg extends. Work your way through how you want to hold the strap. Decide what's best for you. And the right leg could stay bent. That's a bit more of a gentle approach. The right leg could go long for some more intensity. Whatever you need. Try to keep the upper body at ease. Tune into your breath. The breath for me, sometimes when I'm unsure if I'm doing too much or if I'm not doing enough, I can't decide. The breath is that litmus test. Am I able to breathe easy? To come into the twist, the right leg could bend if the leg was long. We'll move the hips a little bit over to the left side of the mat before we come into the twist. The right leg could stay bent or long or some degree of bent if we need to bring some more ease to the pose. And I like to hold the strap in the right hand as I guide the left leg across the body to that prop in some fashion. Once the lower body is settled, work the upper body slowly into the twist, opening up the chest to the ceiling. The left arm could reach out to the left. And the shape you take and the depth you take in the pose isn't always linear over the few minutes that we stay in the pose. You might take a step back, you might soften in a minute, or in 10 seconds, you might decide to go deeper again. You make those moment by moment decisions, tuning into the breath and feeling it out. don't know why the analogy of the 7-layer cake just came into my mind. Maybe because I bought a cookbook today. But you take it out, you have one step, you let it sit, you feel it out, you decide when you add another layer. Maybe you put it in the fridge to cool or the freezer for another layer. Maybe you need to soften. There's an art to finding your depth in the pose, just like baking. And so now you decide here, do we add on? Are you ready for that next layer, that left leg grab? If we allow some opening in the right hip by letting the right knee bend, if it's time to add that in or not. And just because the right knee bends doesn't mean you need to grab or lasso the foot. It could just be a little bend to the knee. And sometimes I've made the decision that, hey, I'm not going to use that strap around my left foot anymore, and who cares where it goes. And you could take the strap and use the strap for that foot grab. Take a few more breaths wherever you are. And start to, step by step, slowly transition out, letting go of whatever you're holding, softening the knees, and making your way onto your back. And find half corpse. Okay, we're going to change our orientation one more time. You can come on up, and this is going to be a nice restful restorative pose that will kind of flow into our shavasana or our final rest. So you could stay into this pose for the entire time if you'd like, or you can take the blocks out when you're ready and have a nice normal shavasana where you're just laying on your mat. So we're going to set ourselves up for a heart opener. So we'll have a yoga prop, maybe a block, a gorgeous ball, or a bolster that goes behind the heart. If you're using a bolster, you could have it going a wide way across your mat. And then I like a prop behind that to catch my head. It could be a blanket if you want the head to drop back some, or having a high prop to catch the head is a little bit more easeful on the neck. And then you can come into this fish variation where the legs just kind of dangle long, but you could also bend the knees, whatever feels good. Butterfly, you choose. I'll do this kind of legs long, which seems to be the most simple. And then as we recline, we want that first prop to hit us right behind the shoulder blades. Think the tips of the shoulder blades or the lower part of the shoulder blades. And then the second prop for the head. And I have my block behind my head on the highest spot because that feels a little bit more gentle. And again, my body today, my yoga, I choose, or you choose, right? You don't always have to have the same setup as me. And then the arms rest wherever it's comfortable. And that's totally going to be dependent on how you've set up the rest of your pose and how you're feeling today. And take a few breaths to do a body scan. Notice if in the head, the neck, the shoulders, the legs, we're holding on to any tension. Just notice they softened in my legs so that my feet can just kind of flop out, and that feels okay. I don't have to use that inner leg line to hold them any specific way. And I'll take you through a little body scan here where first we focus on the forehead, let the eyebrows soften, let the eyes feel restful in their sockets. Allow any tension in the cheeks and the jaw to melt away. Let the tongue fall away from the roof of the mouth and let the tongue soften all the way down into the base of the throat. Allow your arms to feel heavy on the earth as if they were weighted with sandbags. And allow your breath to fill your chest and your ribs with each inhale and softening on the exhale. Let the shoulder blades rest heavy to whatever prop is behind you. You are completely supported in this moment. And let the breath flow freely into the abdomen and the belly, helping to tell our nervous system there's no tiger, we can let go, we can relax and soften. Sometimes I can tell that my body's been in that fight or flight if I go to send that breath to the abdomen and I feel that little flutter, those little butterflies release. And if you'd like, you can keep the legs as they are, or if you want to work in one more opening to the hips, you could let the bottoms of the feet come together and let the knees fall open for a few breaths of butterfly. Seeing if you can get your breath to reach down into the legs. And we'll hold the space, say another minute or so of stillness. You need to transition off the blocks. If you're done with the heart opener, you can just find any restful shape on your mat for the next minute or so. But try to find something where the body and the mind can be restful. still and butterfly, you can release. Letting the knees come closer together, and maybe you roll to your fetal shape, coming off the blocks, and stay there for a moment. If you're in Shavasana, if you were laying on your mat, you can just start to bring a little bit of movement back into your fingers and toes, do any circles or hugs and rocks with the knees. And eventually we'll make our way up to a seat, any seat that feels good for your body right now, even if that's a chair. And just sit tall. Notice the space you created in your body and your mind. And hands will come to heart center, Anjali Mudra, with gratitude for all that we have. Together we breathe in and exhale out. Namaste. Thank you for sharing this time and this space with me. And please let me know if you have any questions. And take care. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.